Hello, sorry people who might be watching us. Let's hope. It's Sunday. It should be 8:30, but it's actually 8:37. My bad. It's Let's Kill Twitter's Sorbet, which is the twice weekly 30-minute catch up that we do to cover Twitter before our next main show, which will be on Sunday the 28th of March with Steve N. Allen and Sindhu V. As ever, the aim is the same. We're here to detox your timeline with the art of conversation and to unpack all that is bad and good about Twitter. And as ever, joining me is my co-host, Sajeela Kershi. Hello, Sajeela.
Hello, Julian. Hello there, world out there. Hope you're all well. Hope you've all been looking at Twitter a bit more than I have this week, actually, because the week before was so difficult. A couple of difficult weeks, I think. International Women's Week, which was marred by a lot of things that our guests did talk about last week. You can still catch the show on YouTube, is that right? You can still see that.
Absolutely, everything is there on YouTube, yeah.
Yeah, and they were really good contributions from Lucy Porter and, of course, Sean McLaughlin.
And Sean McLaughlin, yeah.
Yes. So what something's been getting your goat this week, hasn't it, Julian? We'll let you start.
Well, to be honest, it's not so much getting my goat as things have been getting a lot of other goats as well. But I've certainly been sort of looking at it in a fairly sort of bemused way. So first of all, let's start with flag, not flag, singular. Well, yeah, flag's plural. I'm going to start with a tweet from Mark Wallace, who's I was going to say editor of Conservative Home, chief executive of Conservative Home website. Quite a moderate voice, I feel, in the sort of conservative world. But he has picked up on what was one of the stories of the week, which was an interview with Minister Robert Jenrick. And like all government ministers, it seems at the moment, he has a backdrop with a flag. I've seen loads of interviews now. There's been a lot of montage of like Priti Patel, Dominic Raab. Everyone's got a flag. I don't know whether this is a Zoom thing that they've kind of allowed themselves to sort of have these portable briefing rooms. It's like, well, put a flag in, you'll look more professional. Don't know what we're going to do when we get back to normal interviews, whether they'll have to have a portable set. But Charlie State, one of the presenters of BBC Breakfast with Naga Chetty, has a little dig at Robert Jenrick, and we can actually see that clip. It's a very short clip, so let's go.
The picture. Robert Jenrick, thank you. I think your flag is not up to standard size government interview measurements. I think it's just a little bit small, but that's your department, really. It's just a thought.
The picture of the Queen.
You'll be aware that every time we've seen it every day, haven't we? It's a stock.
Always a flag
thing, isn't it?
Always a flag. They had the picture of the Queen there as well, though, in the Westminster office, I'm assuming.
Robert Jenrick,
right, no need to see it twice.
There's flag is
30 seconds of pure comedy gold. So essentially, they're having a little dig. They are having a bit of a laugh, and the problem is it dovetails into this narrative about sort of BBC metropolitan elite sneering at anything that's sort of patriotic at times, although it really depends on which side of the line you are, because let's face it, the BBC gets criticised for the other sort of side of things as well. It's either too left-wing, too right-wing. So to compound it, Naga Chetty then had to apologise for liking tweets. Well, her words are, "I liked tweets today that were offensive in nature about the use of the British flag as a backdrop in a government interview this morning. I've since removed these likes. These do not represent the views of me or the BBC. I apologise for any offence taken, Naga." And then just to round this off, before I bring you in, is that Conservative commentator Ian Martin writes for The Times, commenting here, "It's ridiculous that Naga should be forced to do this. Journalists and others use the like button to bookmark or say something interesting and noteworthy. Now it's policed, ?
Yeah. This is what we do for our show. We earmark things by liking things, not necessarily because we agree with them, just because we think it's an interesting thing to discuss. So we don't know. She's a journalist as well. She's written articles, and I'm just reading one of hers about it's time to talk about race. And people have kind of commented on that, about the symbolism of the flag and the Queen and how relevant she is. But if it was a white person saying it, would it make any difference? So the thing is, we don't know why she liked them, but have we really got to a point where we can't even like a tweet it's very or should we blame Twitter because Twitter hasn't got enough, I'm going to save this for later, or I'm liking this because I don't want them to feel bad. I'm liking this because I'm just a bit bored, so I just want to be engaged with Twitter. We haven't got those options, Dropbox. So in the absence of those, we can only kind of take her word and why she did that. But clearly she's been asked to apologise by the BBC, because obviously I can imagine, look, you got to, and let's face it, every BBC or radio presenter has always got to say it's not the views of their organisation. But I think we've got to stop policing anyone who says something. Clearly that was a joke, that in the studio. It's the kind of banter we would have. Okay, fair enough, it's on national TV, but it wasn't really. I think we need a bit of silliness and banter, and if they were having a little dig and it was like kind of the size of his flag, we all got that was a joke. I'm not sure what the issue is here, and if it's terms of the flag and whether she's got a right to comment or not on it as a fellow person of colour who comes from an immigrant background. I've used the Union Jack for my work, like deconstructing it a little bit. At a sketch show years ago, Asian Provocateurs, Rule Britannia, we had like the British flag with the kind of South Asian colours kind of blended in. Even with Immigrant Diaries, I've got that with like two eyes looking through it. So it's what you want to make of it, of the flag. But there is, of course, for many people, there's a sense of patriotism. I personally think people get too serious about a bit of fabric, really. Whether it's the flag or whether it's the burqa, do you know what I mean? What is it? Just leave the fabrics alone, people. Come on.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I mean, obviously, I think everything you just said would just look so much better if you had flags in the background. No, obviously, I'm kidding. It put me in mind of one of the sort of first routines when I was getting into comedy. Bill Hicks did this routine about Clarence Thomas, who I think was a Supreme Court judge at the time, and it was to do with the Confederate flag. I think it's just like in the early 90s now. So, but it's just sort of a routine about where he's sort of talking about the hysteria of people's attitudes towards the flag, and it was sort of echoing in my mind as this was going on. I mean, it is. I will say that actually, as far as the kind of the conflabs this week, it's something that I think a lot of people have basically said, look, you can let this one go. So I was listening to Aisha Hazarika's show on Times Radio yesterday. Obviously, Aisha, a former guest. She had Ian Stone and Leo Kurz, again, a former guest. And Leo, we know Leo's a sort of conservative, sort of right-leaning, obviously. But he was like, let's sort of look the other way on this. Well, there was a nice comedy response to this from comedy writer Robin Flavel, who used a picture from Father Ted, which I think is from the Hitler episode, doesn't he say? I hear you're a Nazi now, Father. So he's used, I hear you're a tweet-liker now, Father, which was lovely. That sort of brought a smile. I mean, this kind of expanded with Hugh Edwards putting the Welsh flag as his Twitter background, but Wales were about to play France in the rugby, so it's all kind of tied up with that, and it got a little bit silly, really.
Yeah. It's. I mean, this also brings into the whole lockdown scenario. What we're dressing out our backgrounds. I think they've been influenced by America. With Trump, he's always got flags behind him. Or even when we have the debates here, I just think it's just
they've always been big on flags in the States, although apparently
they are.
Apparently Biden has removed a surplus of flags that Trump sort of planted in the White House. So I mean, it was overkill apparently when he left.
Where those flags are going to go now? I wonder what could you use with them? I mean, I don't know. I just wonder why people get so het up about it's every flag. Every country's got a flag. It's what it stands for, really, wasn't it? That's what we fought for this. We fought for this. It's like
exactly. And you can't. The trouble is, you can't underestimate the power of symbolism. I mean, you know, there's a lot tied up in the Brexit debate about that. There was obviously, you know, we didn't join the euro and, you know, save the pound, and the UKIP logo was the pound sign and all the rest of it. These sort of tangible things, because so much of sort of nationhood and sort of, you know, politics is sometimes quite intangible, that people tend to sort of grasp.
Well, until the Olympics, I have to say that I don't think I ever embraced the Union Jack, because it had different, as you say, different symbolism, and it was always associated with the racist and the far right, you know. So until the Olympics happened, I think it's the first time I actually felt, yeah, this is us, because I was so proud to be British at the moment, so proud to be British Asian, I should say, and just such a wonderful atmosphere that it created. And again, going to the Paralympics in Brazil, the only Union Jack we had was like a towel with my brother towel, the Union Jack, and we were oh my god, why didn't we bring any flags? And it was the first time we found ourselves getting really patriotic, and it was like we're holding up this towel, you know, like really proud.
You got any Tupperware that needs wiping afterwards, you know?
Yeah, and it was just like, look at us, look, we're British, and it's amazing how in that moment it was stood for everything that we thought was good about being British. So I kind of, I don't know what that means, but it's not, you know, things can change, symbolism can change, and it can mean different things. And if it changed for me at the Olympics point, where suddenly I now feel that this is now my flag, you know, finally kind of I've got something I can embrace. Surely we can all get to that place, but we can also have an opinion on it without everyone sort of, you know, knocking you down. It is, like I said, I compare it to the burqa, because it's like, it is fabric that people have very sort of strong opinions about it on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it has been an iconic symbol over the years. It's been a big symbol in pop culture, whether it was the Who, whether it was the Sex Pistols, you know, Paul Weller or whatever, you know, well, certainly a mod, you know, it's been a mod staple, hasn't it, really? I mean, Ian Stone was talking about that on the radio yesterday, so it's this big old mod. But yeah, so, you know, I mean, it is a lot to do with, there is an element of holding on to the past, but there is there's the symbolism, the importance of symbolism, I suppose, is sort of enduring, and you can see that in some of the responses, which were, you know, a little over the top.
Well, instead of saying holding on to the past, I think the positive spin should be, let's see what it represents in the future, and hopefully it's a positive future. You know, we want to kind of change all those negative narratives of the past, and hopefully take them forward into something more positive in the future.
And you know, and if you're a Brexiteer, I think that has a particular resonance, really, honestly, in terms of going it alone. I think maybe that's why there's such a sensitivity around it, you know, because we're such in the early stages of that, and you know, there's obviously a bit of vaccine nationalism going on as well. So where do we go?
Where do you go from there?
I mean, have you got any?
Well, I thought, for just comedy's sake, I thought I quite liked. You just passed it.
Nathaniel.
Yeah. I was just because, like, actually, I'm with him. He said, "Have I?" So Nathaniel Tapley, great comedian, says, "Wait, have I just worked out at 43 years old that cat burglars aren't actually a thing?" I think that was linked to another
there's
tweet
a
that somebody
reply,
responded.
which I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure. There we go.
I think they were once, but burglary's not really a thing anymore. That what with everyone being stuck at home all the time, another of the old traditional crafts lost, which I thought was hilarious, and it made me think, like, actually, what have we lost that's been a negative in the past? That burglary's not cool, and obviously that's great. We've got
never been cool.
Never been cool.
Yeah.
But you know, what other criminal activities have we lost, which is a positive in lockdown? I don't know. Well, that said, there's been criminal activity. Yesterday, I went to town, my local town centre yesterday, to get a couple of bits. I was really excited to go and get some colouring pens. So excited. That's my big trip. But everyone's having the vaccine, so now they're acting like it's normal. And it was heaving. It was worse than Christmas rushes just before Christmas shopping. And the market was open. I was like, "Have I missed the memo? Is lockdown over?" So effectively, they were all breaking the law, really, I suppose.
Well, I mean, there've been some pockets of. I mean, this is obviously what came up with the Sarah Everard visual. People pointing to some various places in London that were Very, very busy. It's like Borough Market, some places along the river. Although I'm sure they enforce masks in Borough Market, but there are public spaces which, if you walk out at a weekend and it's particularly nice weather and all the rest of it, there are some really busy. It almost seems like normality plus one. It seems busier than even normal, but then psychologically it's going to seem like that, I guess.
And the unsung heroes as well, not just the frontline nurses, doctors, train drivers, bus drivers, etc. The Uber Eats and the Deliveroos, every single restaurant, masses of queues. They're literally keeping people employed right now, because there are no, the jobs, those who lost their jobs. There have been queues down the road with people with delivery bags and Uber Eats. I wish I'd taken photos. And I was like, oh my God, this is obviously this is the one job that you can get during this lockdown, and that will be guaranteed work. They must be. They're not.
I mean,
they
the
weren't there
delivery.
before.
There's a big. It's in boom. As long as they're not on their pavements on their bicycles. Don't get me started on cycling on the pavement. That is a whole show.
Oh,
that is
no,
a whole
I agree.
show.
I agree. Pavements are for people, not for cyclists.
I might get that. I might put that on the ticker, which actually, unfortunately, anyone watching this now won't see our beautiful ticker, but we are recording this, and it should come with a lovely ticker, and we won't be distant boxes in the corner either. I had a bit of a technical problem this evening, which I shall be resolving ASAP. Now, that's Nathaniel's jokes has gone down quite well, but obviously, big sort of comedy story of the week really is Lee Hurst's joke. Now, I'm not going to go back to the original joke because I've no need to.
I've actually missed this.
Oh my goodness!
Tell me more about this.
Okay, well look, it's a Lee Hurst joke, and it's about Greta Thunberg. It's about Greta Thunberg. It's about sex, and it's about single-use plastics. So you know where I'm going with this: single-use plastics, condoms. Even though condoms not actually made out of plastic, but whatever, close enough, I guess. So he made a joke, putting all those elements together. And you can see, I think that the joke's been screenshotted and what have you. And it is, it was a coarse joke. It is very much the kind of joke that I remember hearing on the circuit many years ago, and you could probably hear in clubs up and down the country when they were open. Fairly recently to some extent, but I think it was because it was, it was because it was so sort of blunt. It was delivered with the kind of most people like this is a misogynist joke. You're basically aiming your sort of male ire at her because she's a eco campaigner that you don't like and all the rest of it. So he was actually suspended from Twitter. Now he's back now. So it wasn't a long suspension, but he was suspended from Twitter. So again, two former guests have flagged this up. One of them was Francis Foster from Trigonometry, screenshotting the suspension of Lee Hurst's account. If you celebrate another comedian being cancelled over a joke, then you're not a comedian. We should be free to make jokes without the fear of losing our platforms. And platforms, not the shoes, obviously. And then Leo as well. Lee Hurst has been cancelled from Twitter for cracking a joke that was similar to a million jokes by Jimmy Carr or Frankie Boyle. A lot of people are crowing about it. You'll get cancelled too. We're living under cultural authoritarianism. It needs to change. So this, when I've sort of been ruminating over this in the sort of 24 hours or so when this all kicked off, it just made me think. So drawing parallels to kind of Frankie Boyle, Jimmy Carr. I kind of get that, but whenever there's an issue about a joke, that common defence has always been, but it is just a joke, which is a statement or an argument that can be made. But also parallel to that argument is that it really depends who it's coming from. So I remember talking to a comedian who was comparing Jimmy Carr and Ricky Gervais and who he felt he could take ironic racism from or ironic sort of non-PC jokes from, who sold it to them better. And I think chose Ricky over Jimmy. But the point is that it's so important in terms of who's selling you the joke, because usually you can probably detect where the political bias is coming from other things that they've said and all the rest of it, or from what else is in their set, etc., etc. So a joke isn't so self-contained that it can't be interpreted in a sort of in a political way, because otherwise, for some jokes or some comedians, what's the point of making that joke unless you're not making a point, etc., etc. So, I mean, it's kind of, I suppose it's resolved itself because Lee Hurst's now back on Twitter and hasn't been he's not had a Donald Trump scenario.
Yeah.
But again, jokes in the firing line, I suppose.
I've read the joke, okay, so I've just followed up the story and read it. It's a joke that you would hear in any comedy club. This just kind of sort of demonstrates really how quickly the comedy climate is changing in terms of what is and what isn't acceptable. Of course, I think where they've gone for is the creepy kind of side of it, the fact she's a child, and it's not just misogyny, she's a child as well, and people are offended. But in a comedy club scenario, that wouldn't necessarily have really sparked. It's weird, isn't it, how live stand-up seems to be. But then I guess what we're dealing with is in an audience, you'd have a comedy literate audience, or at least people who've engaged with comedy, and they know that what they're about to see, they've accepted that there may be things, but it's we're suspending disbelief. This didn't really happen. So sometimes I have to say to people who are sort of a bit sensitive in the audience, it's like, these are just words. Real people. It's not real people that are getting hurt with these words. These are just jokes. They're just a bundle of words that we put together, and they're just jokes. And I have to say, whether I found it offensive or not, then that banning him is as a comedian, of course I have to take that stance. It's like, you can't. He is a comedian. If it was someone else, though, if it was someone else making a joke, and then they say, "Oh, it's just a joke," I think that's where it has to change. It depends who's saying the joke, who's making that statement, because you can't have a politician say something like that, who's responsible for, I don't know, their local constituents, and then he says something like that, and they're talking about climate change. It really is dependent on who says it. And I think in the terms of, if you know that it's a comedian, he's a well-known comedian, then it's clearly a joke that you just didn't like. It's a joke I have heard before, of course, many times.
Yeah, definitely.
And so it's not even necessarily an original joke, but it's just kind of, it is a joke from a comedian. So can we just get that in perspective, that you just didn't like? Just stop following him, really.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, the thing is, all this becomes so much more loaded during the kind of, culture war atmosphere that we're in. So therefore, the whole sort of issue of taking sides, and obviously free speech, lobby is basically saying, well, you can't take sides. You've got to defend the right of people to say things that you don't like and you don't agree with. But when we live in a kind of, when everything is in such sort of sharp relief in terms of issues.
I mean, I might be feeling different if it's inciting, hatred, violence, but it is just you could replace that with anyone. Like I said, it's a joke that's been done before. What the public doesn't realise is there's so many jokes that are out there. They're not new, fresh today. They were just using a similar packaging to describe other people. Topical jokes, blah blah blah. And they don't realise that there is a sort of like a formula to it.
The only issue being is that because we've come out of recently, not come out of. We're having a discussion about misogyny, aren't we? We're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like it. It's not. Don't get me wrong. I'm not. There's no way I'm saying I like it. Right. Let's get that absolutely clear. I'm sort of seeing it as this like how when I go to comedy clubs with other comedians, I might not like what they've just said, but they are my colleagues backstage. We are, and it's like, I don't know. It's where do we sort of, like, Jim Davison's not my cup of tea. He's never going to be my cup of tea, ever, ever, ever. He's racist. He's misogynistic, but he has, I don't want to work with him. I don't want to share the stage with him, but he's free to do what he wants, because until the law states otherwise, because unless he's, inciting hatred or things that are within the law are it's a very different thing. If it's part of the law that you can't say this, that's when it changes. And I think that's probably what comedians are fighting, because you can't regulate that.
Well, I mean, you only have to look at, you look at the bill in Scotland, the hate speech bill that went through last week, I think it was. And you see, I don't really know. There's a lot of people quite unhappy with it. In fact, actually, one of the letters that was sent when that bill was passed came through a real kind of coalition of religious groups as well as free speech groups. We don't really know, until we start having prosecutions made under it. We don't really know what the extent and the ramifications are going to be. But I mean, this is the problem with any law. It's sort of, it has to be interpreted so there's sufficient case law to actually make it effective and for everyone to actually know where they stand.
I'm trying to think on a personal level, how would this affect me? And I'm thinking, well, there's certain gigs that I would do that there might be children, so no swearing, or they've just asked us not to talk about the particular charity that you're doing. It's not even censorship, it's just the rules of that establishment. The BBC have their own rules, as you know. You can't say the word, what was the word I said? You can't say crap, right? Or was it? Yeah, so the point is, it's like there's so many things that and I wouldn't object to that, because that's kind of the way that they regulate themselves. That's how they do it, and that's fine. So if you're then going into their world and they've said, look, these are the things that you can't. But if they told me, I mean, I did do a wedding once, and they said, don't mention too much about your ethnicity. Don't mention about the affair. Yeah, don't mention about your ethnicity, and try not to mention, because you could pass off as Greek. And I was like, what the hell? Why am I here? Why have you asked me
this
to
wasn't
do
the
this
wedding in Friends, was it? This sounds like the Greek Orthodox wedding.
And it's just like, you could buy, what are you talking about? So yeah, I mean, obviously for me as a comedian, I think I'd kind of addict, but then I also think if someone went too far.
It's funny, you just said something a minute ago, and I'm very going to quickly sort of pick up on this, because it was about the platform. So Francis says that we should be free to make jokes without the fear of losing our platforms. But I suppose the one thing we have to remember about Twitter is that it feels like it is now it's a global entity, and it feels like it's our platform. But nothing ever is when it's a private company, is it? We are still. Yeah. I mean,
answers their rules.
Yeah,
yeah, and I think that's.
I'm not saying they're applying them in a particularly wise way necessarily all the time, but there are.
I think you've just hit the nail on the head, Julian. Though that's exactly right. It is an organisation, and that we are using their services, and we have to go by their rules and regulations. When I set up my gig, when you set up your gig, that is your room to have your rules and regulations. I have my certain rules and regulations. Basically, that the audience are going to respect the acts, because this is their job that they do. So I've effectively groomed them to say, look, this is how we run this show. It's going to be done that way. And that's the same thing with Twitter. Twitter is an organisation. It's like any corporate gig I do, they're going to have their own. I don't like it. It pisses me off. None of us really like doing these corporate things, because we can't really be free, but we do it for the money. Do you know what I mean? It's like, if you're going to use Twitter, we can't really be bitching when they say, hey, you've broken one of our rules, and we're going to suspend you. It's lucky that people are allowed back in, apart from Trump, of course, though I do question why they didn't get rid of Trump sooner, but then it would have been less entertaining.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're right. I think we have got to remember that Twitter and all of these social media platforms where we feel like we're getting sort of censored, they're not ours. They're not our spaces. They're just spaces that we're kind of renting, not even renting, because we're using them for free. And so, yeah, you do when you're in Rome, I guess.
Well, I mean, they need our data, don't they? But I mean, it's a two-way street. But yeah, I know. No, you're right. You are right. So we've covered pretty much the words that we said in our tweet that we cover, which is brilliant. So I don't know if you had a tweet that you wanted to end on, or whether you wanted to just.
Because it's the census today. So I spent it's supposed to be 10 minutes, right? I spent an hour on it. I don't know why. It's because my son's staying over and he didn't want to write, didn't want to say. But so I think I just found something. I just.
Was there right? Did you? Have I?
Yeah,
I'm not sure if I've got the census.
Yeah,
have I got the census tweet? Did you?
Yeah, it was someone saying. What did they say?
I know that everyone's watching Line of Duty, so hang on, wait a second. Oh, was it? Yeah. Wait a minute. It was not the one about. Oh no, I was thinking whether it was Paul Sinners.
My mum's in a panic because she filled the census for my little brother and listed his occupation as barrister, like barrister the
Right.
lawyer.
I don't think
Yeah.
I've got this one. If you've
Oh, do you know what? I might have. Hang on, I'm just going
Yeah.
to send it to you again. So let me just.
I have to say, I just want to say, I filled in my census 2 weeks ago. What's that about?
Oh my God! Well, who are you?
Yeah, I'm the kind of guy that pays bills as soon as they come in. That's who I am.
Who are you? I've just sent it to you.
Excellent.
Yeah, so you can
Right.
let you have a look at that.
Ah,
There you go.
got you.
Yeah, my mum's in a panic because she filled in the census for my little brother and listed his occupation as barrister, as is in the lawyer barrister, rather than
Okay.
barista, who makes the coffees. And I'm being no help at all because I can't stop laughing, which I thought was hilarious.
Ah, that is brilliant.
Yeah, no, I'm amazed that you filled that up. It's £1,000 fine if you didn't do it, so that's why.
Yeah, it certainly motivated me. It feels
Yeah.
like less than 10 years ago. Since that, I'm sure it's every 10 years. I feel like I've filled in another something else.
I feel like I might have missed the last one because I don't remember. Were they not still coming
you
around
don't-
your house then?
I don't. I don't know. I'm not even
Were they
sure that
coming around to your house? I
don't
can't
do
remember.
literally everyone though, do they? I can't. I think that's the idea,
And I was
isn't it?
thinking, if I broke the law, I'm owed £1,000 from 10 years ago. Ha ha ha! You can't touch me. Hoo hoo! No, it might. Maybe I was at my mum's house or something. Maybe that's where it happened because it depends on where you are. And of course, I don't remember specifically anyone coming around to the house to get those. But my God, that's a lot of household. That's a lot of people that were.
I mean, that's how they did it in the olden
Yeah,
days. I do
the olden
remember. I
days.
do remember that back in the 80s.
Was that
I have to
volunteers
say.
or was that real people doing that?
It was like a kind of market research type guys, with
A lot of
their
households in one
lanyards and all
evening.
the rest of it. Yeah, but they didn't.
And it's
It wasn't the same team doing all of them in one evening. Well,
And
it's like
was it always a Sunday?
vaccines, only 40 million to go.
Was it always a Sunday? Do you know?
I don't know. God, my memory's not that good, but I just know that having it online and being able to sort of click a link on it and sort of whiz through. But it's interesting because the barista thing, whenever they got to the earnings bracket, which I think you have to indicate as well, that would be an interesting discrepancy.
Yeah, it's a really. God, he didn't earn very much, this barrister. It's really hit them hard.
Well,
When I was surprised-
coffee's expensive in London, but there is a limit.
Yeah, I was surprised that they didn't really, given that things have changed, like people are temporarily living in different places. It didn't really reference how it's affected. There were certain things I was a bit confused about. Like, okay, my son's only been here because this last lockdown, because it's lockdown, and he's not here normally. There's certain things that I couldn't quite place. Do they mean now or permanently, always, or? So I was a little bit.
Well, there's
confused.
that question, and I noticed Dan Hodges from the Mail on Sunday picked this up. There was a question saying, will there be anyone else in your household on the 21st of March or something? It's like, yeah, you're not going to get us with that one, are you? I mean,
Yeah, you're dobbing us.
dogging us in for lockdown.
I've got 7 other people here. Ha! Broke the rule of 6.
Defacing
And then of course, then you sort of weirdly, I was never worried about the census in the past, but suddenly today I was thinking, oh, this is a lot of information. Who wants to know? What are they going to do with this? Suddenly it's like getting all conspiracy theories in my head and thinking.
And you said you weren't on Twitter this week. Yeah. Come on. It's the perfect mindset, anyway.
Yeah. So anyway, we've been telling everybody they can go and watch their Line of Duty.
Yeah. No. Well, I mean, they'll either be watching
Card
it.
is going to be watching tonight. He's tweeted about that, which was quite sweet.
Well, yeah, my folks are catching up on previous series, so I think they're going to wait till there's been a couple of this one before they start watching it again. But yes, everyone will be tucked into that. Thank you so much for anyone who's caught this on the stream. Sorry we started late. We've made up for it, which is nice. Bonus of 7 extra minutes. And we will hopefully see you next week, which is Sunday the 28th of March at 8 o'clock with comedians Steve N. Allen and Sindhu V. So really looking forward to that one. We'll be sort of publicising that obviously on the channels. We'll get an episode of tonight properly done up and downloaded onto YouTube, etc. Thanks very much for joining us, and take care. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.